This chapter looks at the select statement. The select statement in SQL is the syntax used to retrieve information from a database. So the first thing that I like to do is to go into the documentation and briefly go through the syntax diagrams because they're highly informative. So I'm opening up the documentation on my local machine, and I'm going to go to the master book list again. I'm going to Control F and search for SQL language, hit return, find the next one. There we go, SQL language reference guide. Control F, select. Hit it again, there we go, select statement. Now I could go through reading out all this information in the manuals, but that's not really going to help you. You can read the manuals later on if you really want. You know where to read. Let's take a look at the select statement. The syntax specifically basically says subquery factoring clause, subquery for update. This is the part we're interested in here. The subquery factoring clause is a thing called the with clause that we won't get into in this particular course and will be in the next course. The for update clause allows you to lock information whilst you're retrieving data. In my opinion, in a multi-user database, it's a little dangerous, and when I've seen it used in commercial environments, it's usually caused lock-in problems. I would actually avoid it. Subquery means any query select statement. It means it can be a select statement by itself as a declarative expression. SQL, or structured query language, is a declarative programming language. Means that you put a question in and you get an answer. It's an expression interpreted as an expression. 1 plus 2 equals 3. Put in 1 plus 2, get 3 out. It's not a sequence of commands. It's all a single command that you execute all at once. So you have to think about it a little harder than general modular programming. And here, basically, in its simplest form, a subquery is a select statement, or it's a select statement enclosed by parentheses, which means it's an embedded expression, which means you can have a subquery parenthesized, it gets executed first, or it gets called from another query. We will look at subqueries as in called select statements from other select statements in the next course. Basically, the simple syntax is subquery, which is select statement, go and get stuff, do some things with it that involve unions, intersects, and minus, which means merge the results of two queries together in various ways. And you can have another subquery, subquery, union, subquery. So the most basic syntax is subquery, and then what's called a set operator, and then another subquery. Subquery, union, subquery, take the results of two queries and put them together. We will get to these set operators later on in this particular chapter. Here's some more detail. Well, if we go back up here, I'd like to go through the links. Subquery factoring clause, query block order by clause. The order by clause sorts the results of a select statement, always comes last. Let's click on the query block, it goes to there, it says select. Just ignore most of this stuff. We're going to look at distinct. Distinct finds unique rows or a unique result set based on how you structure the distinct clause, which we'll look at later on. Then you have a from clause telling the select statement what to pull information from. A table, joining to other tables, and you apply a where clause which filters the results, and then a group by clause and a hierarchical query clause. Some of this stuff will be looked at in the next course. There's also a model clause which is highly detailed and we won't go through until we get to an advanced course. Going back again, click on the order by clause, it takes you to the order by clause. It says order by an expression, a position within the select list, which we'll look at in detail shortly, and an alias. And you can ascend or descend the sort. It's got a comma, which means you can do expression, comma, expression, comma, expression, comma, expression, which means you can sort in a complex order for the same query. And here's the for update clause, which we won't look at in this course. So let's go back again. We get back to the query block, and essentially in this chapter all we're going to look at is we're going to look at the select statement itself, including the distinct clause. We're also going to look at union, intersect, and minus. we're going to look at the from clause. We're not going to look at the with clause yet. And there's other syntax here which is really not all that important. The select list. When you run a select statement, it says select from select list. That's the comma delimited list of columns. Select column A, column B, column C from table. As you can see, the syntax says expression, comma, expression, comma, expression, comma, multiple expressions. An expression being a column name or a function or some kind of an expression or calculation on those columns. You can say as alias, which means you as and change the name of it for the query. There's a few other things here. You can select from tables, views, materialized views. Again, that's advanced. And the table reference should be select list. We go back up and we look for query block and we look at from clause. The from clause is where you select, and it doesn't appear to have a table reference here, from table reference. Let's click on table reference just to take you through the drawdown process. Table, query table expression. There's all sorts of other things in here that we don't need to worry about at this stage. Essentially, a table reference is the name of a table. That table name can have a table and an alias or a schema reference with a dot before it, and we really need to try to keep some of the complexity out of this introductory course because we don't want to confuse or throw too much detailed information at you right now.